Howdy, folks, and welcome back to Get NIST-y, the series that breaks compliance out of the checkbox trap and turns it into a real security advantage. No fluff, no FUD, just practical strategies to make compliance work for your MSP. I'm Jared Kasner, and I'm joined as always by my co-founder of Blacksmith InfoSec and co-host of Get NIST-y, Michael Zabarski.
Hey everyone.
All right, today we're going to talk about the questions we have are around sales, sort of loosely here. And so let me just dive right into the first question today. If you were starting a security-focused MSP in 2026, would you sell direct to SMBs, partner with existing MSPs, or avoid the whole thing because the market is already crowded? Um, I'm not going to go with our favorite answer of yes this time. I'm going to go with our favorite answer, the opposite of that, which is no, maybe. Would you sell direct to
It
SMBs?
depends, Jared, is the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, it depends. Yes. Um, so maybe let's break down this question a little bit because there's kind of a lot to unpack in here. And so, Mike, what does this question mean to you? How do you, which angle do we want to tackle this from?
Yeah. Um, this question is we're probably not the best people to answer this question. I will start with that because we do not run an MSP. But I think the short answer is it depends on what your skill set is. Um, and the reason I say that is there's a couple different models here, right? The going direct to SMBs that you asked about, you know, you can do that. There's a decent amount of competition. There's also a lot of SMBs out there, and so there's a lot of room for making sure that you provide a good service and not just slap tools into their businesses. One thing that we have seen that generally helps MSPs, especially as they're starting out, is to focus on a vertical and become experts in that vertical before they branch out. Um, so if you want to specialize in, last week we talked about CMMC for a while. So if you want to specialize in CMMC or specialize in healthcare or specialize in something, um, people talk and they talk within their verticals. And so doing a really good job at, hey, we provide a HIPAA compliant solution to make sure that, hey, you guys will be HIPAA compliant and we're going to be great partners to you. And we're going to understand what tools you guys use, the line of business tools, right? So we can be a better partner because a client that's doing CMMC is probably not using an EHR and EMR, etc. You're not necessarily going to know those terms. Jared, define those terms.
Yeah. So EHR, EMR, these are electronic health records, electronic medical records, right? And Mike's right. So there's sort of two ways of two veins of specialization that you can go down, right? There's the vertical specialization that says, I'm going to know your tool set really intimately. And there's the geographical specialization, right? Where you're trying to get all the businesses on Main Street to be in your hometown to be on your solution. And so either way, again, to Mike's point, people talk. They talk within their community, and their community is the vertical, and their community is the geography. And so I don't know how you want to think about that, but it's like they're going to talk to the people that they know and they interact with on a regular basis. And so if you're hitting all the stores on a storefront on your downtown strip or strip mall, that's also a really good way of getting in there. As you're thinking about security focus, not security focus, whatever else, again, to Mike's point, think about your capabilities. Think about what your skill set is. Don't go in leading with the tools. Don't go in leading with the skills. Don't try to tell your clients or your prospects that you have or that they want what you have. Make sure you understand what they want and show them that you have that, right? Which is a subtle difference, right? It's at the end of the day, it's you have something, they want something, those two things overlap. But if you're telling them, hey, I have this thing and you want it, trust me, you want it, that's going to go over a lot. It's going to be a much harder sale than if you understand what they want and you say, yeah, look, I have that. And I'm going to use the language that you are used to using when I talk about that. If you start talking, and I can go into some specific examples, I guess, but it's really kind of a fundamental shift in how we think about selling that makes a world of difference. The other thing that I'll tell you, the other mistake that we see all the time in selling security, and especially from a security focused MSP, is selling on FUD. Right? You start selling on this like vague, oh, you're going to get hacked. Okay, well, maybe you're going to get ransomware. Well, maybe, and then immediately your clients or your prospects are going to say, oh, not me. They're right. They get defensive immediately and they start putting up walls. And so then you start to make it as scary as possible. And what we found over time is the MSPs that sell with fear, uncertainty, and doubt or FUD, those MSPs might win the business in the short term, but they almost always lose the business in the long term. Either somebody comes along with a scarier story and you lose the business to the person who's a better ghost storyteller than you are, or somebody actually builds a relationship and builds trust, and that's going to take your business every time. Instead, if you build that relationship, if you build the trust and you show the value along the way and are continuing to show value, regardless of whether this is security or not security, show that value every single day, your clients are never going to leave you because they know you, they value you, and they trust you, right? That trust, it takes a long time to earn, but once it's earned, uh, it, it's so much easier to maintain, and that's what's going to help keep your clients sticky. And ultimately, that's what we want, right? Is not just to land the new logo, but then to expand the business within that logo, and then to continue to build trust so that client never leaves you. So that's the pitch for going direct to SMBs.
Yes.
What about partnering with existing MSPs?
I'm gonna say it depends on your skill set, right? There are so the MSP community is a great community, and there's going to be plenty of work whether you are doing higher level work or overflow work for an MSP or whatever that looks like, right? Um, if your focus is compliance, CISO services, a lot of MSPs are always looking for people that are really good at that. That's because they want to outsource that to someone else. And so it really does go back to what's your skill set? What do you have to offer to these MSPs they currently don't have? Is it deep security knowledge? Is it, hey, I know how to secure Google Workspace, and every one of their clients is trying to move to Google from Microsoft, and they don't have expertise because they've been a Microsoft shop forever? Is it, hey, I am amazing at managing backups? Whatever it is, right? Figure out what it is that you have to offer to MSPs they currently don't have. I can tell you from what we've seen, a lot of what MSPs are missing is the business engagement. And so if you have that, hey, I will come in, I will build the relationship, I'll figure out what the business is actually doing, the business being their client, not the MSP business, and help you figure out what you can do to better align to that business. That is huge. And so all those VCIO, CTO, CISO services where you're actually engaging with their clients and figuring that piece out is where some MSPs are lacking, and we're constantly seeing that within as we talk to different partners.
So it sounds like what you're saying though is find out what they want and show them that you have it.
Yes.
It's almost the same pitch as when you're selling direct to an SMB, right? Is if you have something that they want, right? Make sure you understand what they want. But if you go ahead and saying, "Oh, I have this thing. Let me tell you how much you want it," you're gonna have an uphill battle. If you come in saying, "So what is it that you need?" "Oh, you need that. Guess what? Here's my capability. Here's my track record that shows exactly what that is." Right? It's why MSPs don't. The best MSPs are not selling their stack, they're selling their capabilities. They're first asking a lot of questions to understand what their prospects need, and then showing how they can deliver those services, as opposed to giving the here are all the services that we have. Pick from our menu, right? Like that. That's already an uphill battle. You've already sort of lost it in that world. And so the last part of the question is avoid the whole thing entirely because the market is already crowded. I will just say that yes, the market is crowded. However, being crowded does not mean that it's crowded with really good quality security focused MSPs. There are some excellent security focused MSPs out there. There are some excellent business focused MSSPs out there that kind of bridge the gap. There are some CISOs that work exclusively with MSPs and help MSPs deliver value. There are a lot of, like, yes, all of those things are true. However, to Mike's point, there are something like, according to the Small Business Administration, 6 million small businesses in the US alone. And that doesn't account for the rest of the world, of which the US is surprisingly, contrary to most Americans' belief, is the U.S. is actually a relatively small percentage of the overall global population, and so like there are plenty of fish in the sea, as the saying goes, in terms of like where you're going to be fishing from, and then especially if you're willing to focus on both SMBs and MSPs, there's an opportunity to have a ton of business in here that can help let everybody be successful. Right? And the best of us are going to be helping lift the entire industry up and be the rising tide that lifts all boats, as opposed to um, treating it like a zero sum game where the only way I win is if you lose.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think realistically, one of the other pieces is the MSP market is commoditized at the bottom. Right? It takes nothing to call yourself an MSP today. There's no exam you have to pass. I know GTA is trying to solve some of that through their Trustmark certification and stuff, but um, you can go out and get an RMM tool and say, "Yay, I'm an MSP," and so there are a lot of MSPs there towards the bottom side of the bell curve, right? They're very commoditized and aren't really doing MSP services the way I know Jared and I feel MSP services should do. MSPs should do MSP services. And there's also a lot of really good MSPs on the other side of the bell curve. They're killing it and knocking it out of the park, and all their clients love them. And so the question is, becoming an MSP is easy. There's no driver's test for it. Uh, um, but actually providing a good service that your clients will need may not be as easy. And so figure out what you want to be when you grow up, right? It's the you can do a better job than MSPs that are currently out there, some of them. And so I don't think it's I don't think the market is overcrowded. It's crowded, but not overcrowded. And especially as you're starting, you're going to be competing with um, generally MSPs that may not be as mature as the ones on the right side of the bell curve. And so, if you're doing a good job and providing good service, the crowding isn't going to bother you.
Yeah, I think Canales talks about the number of MSPs out there as somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40,000 in the US. I think that's maybe an over exaggeration, but they also say that something like 80% of those MSPs are one or two person shops. And so when you think about just how, first of all, there are multiple orders of magnitude between 40,000 and 6 million if we're just focused on the US market. And so, um, like, that leaves a huge, yes, 40,000 is, if that's the correct number, is feels like a very crowded space. At the same time, the number of clients that each one of those would have to service would be so great that like 100 plus clients per MSP, which I think most MSPs are well below that, right? And so, there is a ton of room to enter the space and not feel like you're going to be stepping on somebody else's toes. Or and so again, think about what your unique value proposition is. Why would somebody pick you versus the MSP next door? And use that as your wedge, but also make sure you're like actually asking questions and understand what your clients need and show them how you can deliver that value. All right. I think we have sufficiently beat that question up. If you have any follow-up, as always, blacksmithinfosec.com/ask. But in the meantime, Mike, do you want to read our second question here?
Yeah. What does it actually mean to be an M365 based MSP now that the real work has moved past endpoints and into identity, governance, and security posture? Whew. um, so yes. right?
You can't answer yes to this. This is not a yes
I
or
think you
no.
can.
This is not a multiple choice here. You can answer yes or no, Mike. Sorry,
I 100
I'm gonna
percent.
hold you to it. A real answer. Real answer. Go.
Um, the reality is, the real work is the data, right? You're always trying to protect the data. That's kind of the end of the conversation. That data may live in SharePoint, OneDrive, may live in somewhere else. But the idea here is you need to understand identity, governance, security posture, etc., um, to protect the data. And so the identity layer becomes the perimeter, right? You need to understand who's connecting to the environment. You need to have conditional access policies. You need to make sure Enter ID is configured properly. It is not enough for you to just say, cool, I'm going to offer Microsoft. It needs to be, hey, I'm going to configure Microsoft properly. I'm going to follow best practices. I'm going to make sure that our users are on the right level of licensing. There's still a ton of companies out there that I'm seeing are on business standard, and I get that money is a huge factor for SMBs, but getting your clients at least to business premium where you have the more robust security controls is huge. It makes a huge difference. Um, but this is kind of how you start stopping the incidents and the breaches, right? It's the figure out who's actually connecting, who's logging in, and who has access to the data. Um, and then making sure that it stays configured, right? You don't want Marty to come in and configure MFA, and then Jake goes in the next day and turns it off, and all of a sudden you have an incident, right? Um, Monitoring the environments, making sure that there's no configuration drift. Um, but it's always going to start with, who's accessing the data, where are they accessing from, that whole identity aspect. Is it the right person, the right location, the right device? Do we have insights into all three? Because if Jared logs in from I'm gonna pick on your mom for a second, Jared, because I love her. If Jared logs in from his mom's laptop into our environment to do some work, I don't know what kind of endpoint AV is on his mom's endpoint. I don't know if it's already infected. I don't know anything about that device, right? So you need to control how people, who, how, and from where access your data. When Jared goes on vacation, if he goes to North Korea, I'm not going to let him access our data. If he happens to come back from North Korea, that'll be a pleasant surprise.
Not going to North Korea anytime soon. So, yeah, I think everything that you're saying, Mike, makes a ton of sense. I'm going to put it in a little bit different terms here, right? So this is maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago now. This is pre-COVID, so at least 6 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I was at B-Sides in San Francisco, and I heard a talker, one of the speakers, talked about how security really hasn't changed in the last 10,000 years. And the point she was making is 10,000 years ago, you had something that somebody else wanted, and it was your job to stop them from getting it. Now, in a lot of ways, it was simpler because it was the person with the biggest club was going to win. You stood outside your cave, somebody tried to come in and take your stuff, and if you had a bigger club and you could beat them up, you were going to protect your stuff. And if they had more people or a bigger club, they were going to come and take whatever you had. The same thing is largely true today. The difference is it's not like we have one cave entrance that you have to guard, right? When we live in a world of uh, digital communication, we've got a lot of different front doors in a lot of different ways, right? And so, to Mike's point, what we're trying to do is scope down the number of front doors that we have and the number of back doors that we have, for that matter, also, right? Scope down on the ingress and egress points that somebody could take data from. And so you have ZTNA and SASE solutions that will help funnel all of your traffic into one front door. VPN solutions are another option, right? But if you can funnel everything through one pipe, essentially, that says if you're not connected to this solution or through this tunnel, you're not getting access to our information. That helps limit the number of places that you have to worry about somebody taking things from. And then to Mike's point, you can put in these conditional access policies, and you can put in whether it's Microsoft's conditional access policies or a SASE or ZTNA solution for conditional access to make sure that it's not just having McAfee Home antivirus or a vast free antivirus on your
I can't
machine.
believe you used
You're
the
actually
M word.
using what's that?
I can't believe you used the M word.
Yeah. Like using a state of the art EDR solution that is company approved and that is configured properly, right? This is what the value of MDM and RMM solutions is that you can not just have these things deployed, but actually ensure that they are configured properly. And uh, my wife had we'll call it a minor security incident. One of her employees' laptops was stolen back in December, and I looked at their trust center, and they had MDM installed. I said, "Great, let's go look at your MDM configuration so we can understand what the scope of how bad this is." Well, their MDM was installed. They had the agent running, but they hadn't configured the MDM properly. So there was no enforced full disk encryption. There was no enforced screen lockout. None of this. And so, we're looking at the MDM, and I'm like, I actually don't know whether somebody has accessed the device because you don't know exactly when this device was stolen. I can see when they last logged in, but I don't know whether that last login was, or at least rather when the device last checked in, but I don't know whether the device was, I can't confirm that the device was locked at that last check-in. I can't confirm that the full disk encryption was turned on, right? So it's not enough to have these tools. You have to make sure they are configured properly. And so long-winded way of saying, to the extent that you can, scope down the way that you are, or the number of ingress and egress points, the number of places where data can flow in and out of your system, and then make sure that it's not just password protected, it's actually putting the conditional access policies in place so that you are making your life a little bit easier. And when I say password protected, like for the love of God, turn on MFA, enforce MFA, and ideally use
Phishing resistant MFA.
phishing resistant MFA. Thank you, Michael. That's a
You're
brain
welcome.
fart there. But yes, get pass keys or hardware keys or something that is phishing resistant for MFA. It's not a guarantee. None of these things nothing is a guaranteed stopper to keep people out. What you want to do is make it so hard for somebody to get in that they give up and they move on to somebody else.
Yeah, and the other piece, and I will never stop complaining about this, is talk to your users, train your users. There's a lot of things that users can do, and when they do that, none of the controls you have in place matter or help or anything else, right? Make sure they're not pasting sensitive data into AI. Make sure that they're not taking pictures of stuff and with their phone and uploading it somewhere. Like, train your users, engage with them, don't just ignore them. That is a huge aspect of your security posture, right? They're going to be your first line of defense. They're going to be your last line of defense. Um, they need to be able to identify potential threats.
Yep. Cool. So all of that kind of covers what it means to be an M365-based MSP. It really applies to whatever identity and governance solutions you're using today. And so whether you're Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, if you're using Okta or some other identity layer on top of whatever solution you're using, all of these things, like these same principles apply everywhere. And so please like think about what you're doing. And I think more importantly, Mike, you talked about don't give people or train your people not to put sensitive data into AI. Give them the tools to allow them to be successful so that they're not finding ways to circumvent the policies that you have in place, right? If you give them a small language model or a self-hosted LLM or something that allows them to actually interact with and use AI in a way that is safe and sane, they're going to use that instead of trying to find ways to get it out of the system and circumvent DLP or whatever else to put it into the public version of ChatGPT. We saw this a while ago where one of our partners and clients was pasting sensitive information into the public ChatGPT because they didn't have any other solution and they wanted to be able to do stuff, right? So don't just say no, say here's how.
Yep.
Anyhow, I think we're just about out of time and out of information that we can share on this topic. So, Mike, you want to wrap us up for today?
Sure. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's content, please share this episode with a friend. If you joined us for the first time, hitting that follow button helps others discover us in the future. It means you won't miss an episode. And as always, you can submit your own questions at blacksmithinfosec.com/ask, and we'll see you guys next week.
Get NIST-y.